Truth is not hard to find. What is hard is to separate it from the lies. There's so many advanced, intricate, and thousands of year old systems of lies that have hidden the truth in the plain sight. We've been programmed, manipulated, hypnotized, even to a great degree, compartmentalized, and politically managed to such an extent that we don't even see the basic facts of life. I'll give you an example. All matter is an illusion. We know this. You have studied this in probably grade 4 or grade 5 of your school, but it has never been talked about. It's like a lie by omission. Give you an example. Take a microscope, zoom in on a solid table. Zoom in enough until you see small particles, and then zoom in enough until you see uh, molecules and atoms. Inside the atoms, or inside or on the metaphysical surface, when you zoom in, you will see that the matter that you thought was stable, which was forming a wooden chair or a wooden table or any solid surface, even a stone, when zoomed in, appears to be vibrating, but when zoomed out, appears to be stable. Another factor is that when you zoom in, matter appears to be empty. Right? What is an atom made up of? It's made up of a nucleus, and then it's made up of electrons. Nucleus contains the neutrons and the protons, and the electrons are orbiting around the nucleus. However, 99.5% space, or 99 point, I don't know the exact percentage, okay? But almost all the space inside an atom is empty. When you zoom in with a microscope, a microscope on any object, on any matter, you will see that atoms are hollow, but when you zoom out, they do not appear to be hollow. They appear to be solid to your senses, right? And that is because your senses are made from the same substance that the atoms are made from. Okay? So in reality, the material universe is only made up of three things. Okay? Just like a computer, a laptop, a desktop, any kind of an AI system which has a two-dimensional view, or a two-dimensional motherboard that works it, has been coded down into a binary language of 0 and 1. Okay, every single code, every single command that you put into the computer boils down to a 0 and a 1. All the movies that you're watching, all the video games that you're playing, all the coding that you're doing, all the editing that you're doing, everything boils down to a 0 and a 1 at the base of it. Just like that, in the material universe, all the 108 elements that are made, that we see in nature created by the Creator, are made up of only three things: electrons, protons, and neutrons. There's no fourth component. There is a fourth component. It's not present in the material world. Okay, that fourth component is time, but we'll talk about that later. But in the material reality, there's only three components that the whole entire material reality and the material universe around you is made up of. Try to understand and comprehend this idea. that a game in a computer or a computer reality is not much different than the reality that we are living in, right? Just with an additional dimension. Just because a computer reality is projected on a two-dimensional screen, it only needs a 0 and a 1 to process. But since as humans, we have a third dimension of height, or a third dimension itself, you know what I'm talking about. So we need a third axis as well to process that third dimension. And that third axis is provided by the third component in the atom. These three components of the atom is itself the trinity of the Bible. It's also the trifecta of the Hindu gods, of the creator, the governor, and the destroyer, the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. It's also the Tawheed in Islamic faiths. And I'm sure there is a word for it in the Jewish scriptures as well, but I forget. But it's all derived from the nature of the atom. The nature of the atom is three-dimensional, and actually, before all these, or before the Abrahamic religions were instituted, I will say, and constituted and implemented, the whole world was pagan. And the Abrahamic religions, if you really look at the crux of what it is they condemned idol worship very heavily, and then focus on worshipping a formless, nameless entity. Well, not really nameless, but it was intended to be nameless, like in Judaism. But then the reason I think really, if and okay, before that, and before the Abrahamic religions uh, took inception, the highest god in every pagan pantheon, Google it, okay, and you will find it. The highest god in every pagan pantheon would be Atom, okay, literally Atom. I'll give you a few examples. Like in the Egyptian mythology and in the Egyptian culture, Atum Ra, Atumra, Atum Ra was the highest god on the god pantheon. That same god was at sometimes also called Anumra as well. Okay, because Anu is also a word for atom in Sanskrit or Vedic. And Sanskrit was, or Vedic or pre-Sanskrit was a very prominent language of the old times. And Anu was also one of the highest gods in the Assyrian scriptures, or the Assyrian legion of gods. Phoenicia had its own high god called Anu. Zeus, who's the highest of the Greek gods, was also a version of Atumra and Anu. And in India, actually, the concept of Brahman and Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh actually explain the atom even in further detail. But because I believe, this is what I think, is they didn't really have modern science like we have today. I mean, they were extremely enlightened beings before the Dark Ages started, but they did not have technology as we have today, like cell phones and microscopes and other things. They were internally enlightened, okay, not externally educated like we are today. So those people had a different way of visualizing reality. They had a different way of conceptualizing reality. And I think their way was the more holy way, the more true way. What we are doing today is a brainwashed education, but what they were having was a gnostic education. Okay, they were having a spiritual education. However, yeah, so Anu was the highest of the gods in the god pantheons, and that Atum was the highest of the gods in the gods pantheon, and that was for a reason, because they knew that Atom is where the magic is happening, and we are actually living in a magical universe. Realize this: the systems of education, the systems of the whole systematic setup of the world has robbed you of the magical universe that you live in. The movie industry and the media industry, everything else has robbed us of knowing how magical our universe is. Every moment that we're living, we are actually living in a divine AI created magic, a world of AI created divine magic. Because atoms, everything around you, 99.5% of it is hollow, but it doesn't appear to your senses as hollow. Everything is made up of only three things. Just like in a computer, everything is made up of only zeros and ones. Everything around you is only made up of three things: electrons, neutrons, and protons. The poison, the food, the medicine, the lethal drugs, the black color and the white color, and a rubber tree and a food grain, everything is made up of only three things, the same three components. But what changes is just their numerical value. What changes is just their uh, uh, mm, 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 composition, numerical composition in the atom. How does the oxygen atom know that it's an oxygen atom? And how does a hydrogen atom know that it's a hydrogen atom when the neutrons, electrons, and protons are all the same? It knows by the number of neutrons, electrons, and protons. That means the number of something, the number of neutrons, the numbers of electrons, the number of protons must change the property of the element itself. And how is that possible unless we are in an AI, right? Unless we are in a simulation where three zeros and two ones form the letter A, but then two zeros and four ones form the letter B, where the components of zeros and ones still say the same, but it's the numbers, like the quantities of zeros and ones, which changes the property of the outcome. That's how a code is written at the base of it. And we are living in a code. But the systems of the world, all of them, the religious, I mean by religious, when I say the systematic, the organized religions, the three main organized ones of the world, and the other systems of the world have robbed us of this magic, have robbed us of this happiness. We are created to live in this magic. We are supposed to experience this divine magic. Living this magic is what will bring the peace out of you, which is what will bring the satisfaction out of you, is what will bring the gratefulness out of you for the creator. What will bring the appreciation for the creator. But unfortunately, the systems of the world have have led us to believe that we're an accident, that we are just a speck of dust in this vast nothingness. All of that is nonsense. All of that is systematic nonsense. We are living in absolute magic. There's magic everywhere around you. Rubber and concrete are made up of the same three things. Material fact. I'm not talking about some spiritual mumbo jumbo. This is material reality, that everything is made up of just three things: electrons, neutrons, and protons. And that's the reason actually that the world is a cycle, right? So for example, the the food that we think is nutritious, or let's say if you are a farmer and you want to prepare, or you want to farm the most nutritious produce in your state, what are you going to do? You're going to stop using artificial things and stuff like that, and instead start putting organic chemicals, I mean organic produce, organic feed in the ground. You'll put earthworms in the ground. You'll use chicken manure. You'll use whatever, horse manure, buffalo manure, whatever you get to, provide nutrition to the soil, to provide nutrition to the plants, because that's where plants will, suck up their nutrition and their food from. Then yes, you might use some chemicals to prevent the insects from coming over, but the main source of nutrition for the plant is going to be from the waste of other animals. Okay, so an earthworm's, excuse my directness in French, but earthworm's shit is plant food, and then our food is the plant itself. Okay, if and then inversely, let's say if you are eating meat, if you're eating chicken, chickens naturally eat insects and worms again, and insects and worms eat other insects and worms, and stuff like that. So even in their cycle, someone's waste is someone's food. A cow, let's say, is grazing on a grass, which is then in the grass is grown consuming the deads of the soil, or the waste matter of the insects that's been fallen on the soil, or the waste matter of the animals that fall on the soil. So this whole cycle of shit becoming food and then food becoming shit is also, it's pretty magical in itself. And this magic only happens because the whole entire material system that we see is built up of only three things in material reality: neutrons, electrons, and protons. Okay, that's why this whole terrarium of a world is possible. And yes, we are living in a terrarium. What we know as a part of our physics and school geography is, to a great extent, just a part of another religion. Okay, the material reality is very different, extremely different. So try to visualize this three-dimensional universe that we are living in. Okay, forget about the fact that, forget whatever you've learned in school. It's good for you to get a job, but if you really want to know the true nature of reality, and if you really want to find the secrets of the universe, education is not going to take you anywhere. Okay, literacy will, yes, of course, literacy is important, but education is not. To look into this topic further, uh, we are going to look into an experiment called as the double slit experiment. Have you heard about it? If you haven't, that's just that just goes to show what is education, okay? How it affects our lives and how it only tells you what it wants to tell you, and it keeps away what it doesn't want to tell you. So this double slit experiment, okay, it's been done over 100 years ago, and it should have been the most significant or it is actually the most significant experiment done in an academic setting, but it's probably the least known experiment in the academic world. Again, I never heard of this experiment in school. Never. I only found it out on YouTube a few years ago. And this experiment just proved my questions and my doubts even further. Okay, what this experiment is you can Google it yourself. I'm not going to explain the whole apparatus and how it works, but the conclusion of the experiment is that matter itself is conscious. Okay, have you watched the movie Flubber? You know how the scientist creates a bouncing substance, like a bouncy green substance that you can basically put anywhere, like under your shoes, and then bounce around. And that substance itself is conscious in itself, like it has a mind of its own, something like a jellyfish or like an amoeba. So matter is conscious. Every atom, every molecule, every single electron of matter is conscious in itself. Why? The experiment proved that when a human eye was looking at the matter closely, the atom behaved as particles. Okay, it behaved as physical matter. But when no one was observing the matter, the atom behaved as a wave. Okay, I'll repeat it. When an observer was observing the atom or the molecules of atoms or the electrons of the atoms through a very powerful microscope and a viewing device like a camera, matter behaved as matter. Atoms behaved as particles, as physical particles, and as actual matter itself, as electrons, protons, and neutrons. But when an observer was not looking at the atoms were behaving as waves, as frequencies. Okay, that means the atoms itself were conscious of the observer looking at them. They knew that they were being observed. That means every single particle of an atom must have a base level consciousness in itself, that it's being observed, and to change its properties depending on the observer. How is that possible? How is that possible if we're living on a rotating ball, or let's say, like, as the academic or scientific narrative is, like, if we are an accident and everything has started from I don't know what. I don't know even how to even begin to explain the Big Bang, but s- same with the Abrahamic concept too. I cannot even explain that concept of creation, but I negate those both of those concepts actually, because creation is something totally different which we know nothing about. We shouldn't even try to comprehend that unless we first discuss the reality of the true nature of reality. the true nature of atoms and true nature of matter. Unless you even discuss that, there's no point discussing creation, this, that, and the other. Look into the double slit experiment. See what are the conclusions. Grasp the complexity, the intensity of this matter, and see how important this topic is to your Gnostic beliefs, to your spiritual understanding of reality, and your belief in God, everything else. Let me know what you think. Check out my book, The Dead Souls of Atlantis, on Amazon in your country. If you're not able to find it in your country on Amazon, email me or leave me a comment below and I'll see what I can do. But try to grasp the underlying nature of reality, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.